Hey everyone, I am Molly Jakes. Welcome to 25 Live on Pricing and Negotiation. I'm a letter, illustrator, and entrepreneur. If you are familiar with my work, you are probably familiar with these roles that I have taken on. So I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan, in my 100-plus-year-old home with my daughter Juniper and my husband Cody. That's us there, just hanging out, and my two dogs, Fievel and Dakota. I have been working as a freelance lettering artist since 2010, and I've had the opportunity to work with some of the best brands on the planet, like Disney, Nike, Wall Street Journal, Apple, the New York Times, just to name a few. Not to toot my own horn, but I'm gonna a little bit because I am teaching this workshop. And that's us in my 100-plus-year-old home, which can be a pain in the butt sometimes, but we love it and it has a lot of character. So over the years, I've had to self-navigate most of how to do business as a commercial lettering artist, because in the past, lettering was often looped into sign painting or type design, which really are different than commercial lettering, both in technique as well as application and usage. And these days, lettering is considered more in the realm of illustration, even though it really is pretty different from illustration. But in terms of pricing, we use illustration pricing as a guide point, kind of like as a just like as a starting point, because the standards have been so well established over the years, and really it just it's similar in a lot of aspects. So today we are going to be talking about current pricing and negotiation standards in the United States for commercial letterers and calligraphers. So being a commercial artist is a little bit different than working in the wedding industry. I know some of you probably work in the wedding industry or maybe just a little bit curious about commercial art. But the lettering that we create as commercial artists is almost always used on something that will either be sold or will help sell something. The reason I want to talk about this specific topic is because I get a lot of people asking me all the time how to price their work and how to negotiate with clients. There is a lot of information out there about how to price graphic design and illustration services, but really not much about lettering. So that is why we are here today. And we are all guilty of undercharging our work at some point in time. So, if some of these numbers surprise you, just don't feel bad. Just keep my tips in mind for future projects. And hopefully you can not only get paid what you're worth, but you'll also be contributing to a more sustainable and competitive industry for both letterers and calligraphers. Okay, so in this quick 25 minutes, I am going to run through my bread and butter freelance projects, which are the projects that I most often work on, what I charge for them, and how I generally negotiate with the client. I hope that this can be helpful for you on your freelance journey. And at the very end, I'm going to open it up to discussion for Q&A. So let's just jump right into it. Part one, pricing. Okay, let's start with how to price your work. There are two ways to price your work that are most common. This is hourly or by flat fee. So I personally never charge hourly, but lots of artists do. It really just depends on what's right for you. And in some cases, you may decide to charge both ways. And that really is the beauty of being a freelancer, is that you get to control over how you charge and how you communicate with your clients. You get to have the freedom, and that is pretty darn amazing, in my opinion. Okay, so let's start with hourly pricing. With hourly pricing, we tell the client how much our services will cost per hour. So this can range generally anywhere between like 25 an hour and up to like 250 an hour. And it all just depends on your expertise, your overhead costs, like say your studio space, what it costs to like produce artwork, et cetera, and possibly who the client is. Here are a few scenarios in which you might want to charge hourly. Okay, so number one, maybe a project is really simple and you can accurately assess how long it will take you to complete. So if you do this, just make sure that you establish a minimum number of hours in case the project really won't take long. So for example, If a project is only going to take you like 15 minutes, maybe it's a really quick thing, you're going to want to charge a full hour for that to make it even worth your while. Number two, you might want to charge hourly if you are working with a client that you know will want to talk with you a lot. This could be either in person or over the phone, and charging hourly in this scenario might help you make sure that your client uses his or her time appropriately when meeting with you. I get this a lot with a lot of my work, where I will be hopping on creative meetings and just meetings in general where people want to talk through stuff that easily could have been done over email, which I bet you a lot of you feel that way. And if you are chatting in the comments right now, which I cannot see if you are, but if you are, it might be fun if you want to like go ahead and like share any like little stories that you have about freelancing and people taking up your time, or things that have worked really well for you, maybe things that have gone really quickly. Okay. Here we go. Number three, the client needs a lot of creative collaboration. Okay, so this is similar to the last statement. If your client will need a lot of brainstorming time with you directly, this is something that you might want to charge hourly for. And lastly, similarly, if the project includes a lot of research on your end before you even get to creation of the project, that might be something that you want to charge for. Again, this is something that I run into a lot with my work. Doing a lot of research, making sure that the creative aspects are all kind of like in a row and ready before I even go. And sometimes that takes a lot of time. Okay, next we have flat fee pricing. Flat fee pricing is the type of pricing that I've been using for my work since I started. The reason I hopped on this train was because back in like, I think it was like 2011 or so, around the time I started freelancing in like 2010, and 2011 is when I was like starting to get pretty serious. So I think it was then. I read somewhere on Jessica Hish's blog about pricing, and she explained why it's so beneficial to quote per project instead of hourly. So here I am today, pricing per project. That's still what I'm doing. So thank you, Jessica. And you know, she's like the queen bee. All of you probably agree that she has done a great job paving the way for all of us in understanding pricing and negotiation, and like, you know, ways to like ethically conduct business as lettering artists. So thank you, Jessica. That's awesome. One of the reasons that this practice is so valuable is because of this. Okay, let's compare two artists who work on the exact same job. The first artist charges $250 an hour, which seems like a lot, right? And it takes that person 12 hours to complete the job from start to finish. That the total that that artist would have earned would be $3,000, and you know, that's not including taxes and all that stuff that we can save that for another 25 live. The second artist who works on the exact same job charges by the project, so a flat fee, not by the hours worked. So this artist charges $3,000, but it takes them only 3 hours to finish the work, and it's just as good as the other artist. Maybe even better. This is a hypothetical situation, but let's just say that it's just as good as the other artist or better. So who comes out ahead in this scenario? To me, it sounds like the second artist who charged $3,000 but only worked 3 hours instead of 12 hours. Okay, so this really isn't the case in every single scenario, but I'm telling you, it really has worked for me over the years, and there have been jobs that I've made indeed like $3,000 for 3 hours total of work. This is really powerful, and it's something that I would love for you folks to be able to do as well. I highly recommend charging flat fees. It's just my opinion. In the next part of the workshop, I want to cover pricing guidelines for my bread and butter projects. These are the types of projects that I work on most often, and odds are, if you're a letterer like me, you probably get similar inquiries. If you're just starting out, these inquiries might be coming from smaller companies, but nevertheless, these guidelines can be really useful in almost any scenario, and they should fit your needs pretty darn well. Okay, on to general pricing guidelines for commercial letterers who charge per job instead of hourly. All of my pricing guidelines come from my own adaptation and my art rep as well. We kind of work together on this. So they come from my own adaptation of the suggestions offered in the Graphic Artists Guild Pricing and Ethical Guidelines Handbook. I use a combination of illustration, lettering, and type design as a guiding point for these prices, and it has worked out really well, and I fully stand behind this pricing structure from an industry perspective. If you are not familiar with the Guild Handbook, make sure you go ahead and pick it up after this workshop. It's such a good investment for your business. And I will be sure to add a link to the book within the digital classroom once everything has been recorded and uploaded to that digital classroom. And again, I'll notify everybody once that is actually ready. So pricing for lettering work usually takes into consideration a few things: usage, size of company, and the scope of the project. Of course, there are other elements that may influence what you charge, but those aspects are a really great starting point. I feel like I shouldn't even have to say this, but just know that the pricing I'm sharing should be looked at as a starting point. So you get to build on this figure. You get to build on this and figure out what fits best for you. To keep track of this part of the talk, to keep this part of the talk super short and to the point, I am going to share standard pricing for book, just like a few different examples. Book lettering, again, which is like a bread and butter project for me, product lettering, and magazine lettering. First, magazine and book lettering. Note that this is just for lettering. It is not for any sort of graphic design or illustration. And that's kind of like, I think for a lot of artists, it's where it gets like a little bit confusing, because if you are referencing the handbook, it's like, okay, this isn't even in there. What do I do? And that's kind of why I take little bits and pieces and run it by my art rep, and we kind of really just like jump into it. Oh, I'm getting some little notifications. Okay, all right, cool. Here we go, book lettering. Okay, let's start with cover title art. Again, this is just the title. So for me, again, I'm keeping this just like very to the point. So for me, for cover art, for a small company, I will charge anywhere between $650 to $1,200. And again, this really depends on your expertise, what goes into the project, what the scope of the project is, et cetera, et cetera. And for a large company, I charge between $1,200 and $3,000. Again, I charge on the higher end because I'm pretty well versed in what I'm doing, and my clients come back to me quite often, and my art rep and I, we can charge that. You might need to add on fees if they plan on using the artwork for other things, and that is another little aspect that I think going into the Pricing and Ethical Guidelines Handbook can be very helpful, adding on those little fees and all that stuff. Okay, next, let's talk about magazine lettering. So for magazine lettering, for a cover, again, this is very similar to illustration. For a cover, I would charge anywhere between $650 to $2,000, and this is for like all, either a small publication or a large publication. I kind of looped them in together because I just feel like doing magazine lettering, to me, it feels like that can be looped together. Whereas like if you're working for a publisher, if you're creating title art for, say, someone who is self-publishing versus like doing title art for a Disney book, the pricing is going to be very different. Whereas with magazine lettering, it's like pretty standard. So these are my standard pricing. For a cover, $650 to $2,000. For a half page, $450 to $1,200. And for a spot illustration / lettering, not an illustration, I kind of interchange the word. I use, I go $250 to $650. Next, let's talk about product lettering. Okay. So for a small company, I would charge $250 plus. And so for a few examples of product lettering that I do quite often, I do a lot of like lettering for like t-shirts or mugs or stationery, things like that. And so for a small company, I would charge $250 plus, depending on the complexity and all of that. And for a larger company, I would charge $650 plus. A great example of this is I do a lot of work for Shutterfly, and I love working with them. They're an awesome client, so I lower my price for illustration for them to kind of cultivate a reoccurring business relationship. Okay, I just want to double check that. Here we go. Here we go. I want to double check that everything is going smoothly. I keep getting this notification. Oops. All right. One more. Okay. I'm trying, for some reason, this is not wanting to. Here we go. Okay. I'm getting these notifications. I want to make sure that everything is going smoothly. Okay. All working smoothly. All right. I'm just making sure because I was getting a lot of notifications. Okay, cool. I'm just going to continue on. All right. New share. Here we go. Back to share. Oops. Sorry, folks. Okay, hello. I'm going to go back to share. I was just making sure that everything was going smoothly. Okay, cool. All right. Going back to what I was doing, share and play. Here we go. Where was I? Okay, part 2, negotiation. All right, this is a really fun part. I absolutely love the negotiation process with clients. It's really fun. And because I work with a rep who really only reps a few artists, I think she has like 8 to 10 people on her roster at a time. What it means is that I really get to have my hands in things, but then I don't have to deal with all of, you know, like the crap that you don't want to have to deal with as artists. My rep will deal with that. But I get to like be a part of the whole negotiation process and see what the client is saying. I can chime in if I want to, and that is really cool. Okay, so this might seem a little bit overwhelming and perhaps a lot of things that you need to remember at this point, but I promise the more you price out your work and just practice negotiating with clients, the easier it will get, and it will really start to feel like a natural process to you. If you are feeling insecure while you're pricing something out, just use the little cheat sheet that I'm going to include with this class once everything has been recorded and uploaded. And I'll be sure to notify everyone again when that link is ready, when the cheat sheet is ready. It'll make your life a lot easier, I promise. So when you use the cheat sheet, you can rest assured that you are pricing your work well. And if you have any really tough questions, you can always just run them by me or another artist that you know who maybe works in the same industry. And honestly, we all want you to price your work well because it makes the industry stronger for all of us. And like I said a bunch of times, it helps uphold pricing standards, which is such a good thing for everybody who does lettering. Okay, for this portion, I'm going to walk you through 2 separate hypothetical client inquiries and how I would personally negotiate with them. I'm going to start with a really easy to navigate inquiry, and then I will end with a more complex negotiation that isn't so black and white because you are bound to run into complex negotiation at some point in time if you continue on the path as a professional letterer. Both client inquiries are extremely common for me, which means if you're a letterer, they are probably going to be pretty darn common for you at some point in time as well, at least hopefully. All right, let's start with the first hypothetical client inquiry. So for this one, I'm choosing to outline book title art because it is pretty straightforward. The pricing structure is very standard, and there's like an end in sight to the project, which isn't always the case when you're working on something that's like an ongoing lettering job with a client. So I'm going to jump into the inquiry. Here we go. So this is just like I picked, I just kind of like chose a bunch of different little aspects of different inquiries that I get in my emails, and I didn't like blatantly copy someone's email, but I have picked kind of through some different emails. So this one reads, like this. Hi, Molly. Hope you're doing well. I am starting to work on a new book, and I'm interested in having you illustrate the title. The book is about blank. I don't have a creative brief for the cover art to send just yet, which is very common. I would need a sketch by blank and finished art by blank. We will need the subtitle illustrated as well, and we will send that over as soon as possible. The subtitle will be roughly 1 sentence. We'd like the title written in brushed script lettering. I'll send along a few examples of your work that we like. Let me know if this sounds like something you would like to help with. Warmly, an art director at a big name publisher. And this is my response. Hello, art director. I'd love to help out. Thank you for thinking of me. Book covers are my favorite to work on, which they are. That is not a lie. Okay, I'll need a bit of info from you before providing a quote. First, what type of usage do you need for the artwork? Second, would you like to buy out the right to use the artwork exclusively? Third, what's your budget for this project? Warmly, Molly Jakes. Okay, so the usage is referring to how the client is going to use the artwork. So like maybe you're asking like, is it just being used on the cover? Is it going to be used for promotional materials or et cetera, et cetera? Buying the rights is asking them if they want to completely own the artwork so they can use it in any way that they feel necessary. Okay, and as artists, we technically own all, this is like a little side note, as artists, we technically own all the artwork we create unless the client buys the rights to it, which is something that we don't think of that often, at least if you're just starting out. So clients can buy either partial rights or full rights. And lastly, when I ask about the budget, I'm already fully aware of what the general max I could charge for something like this would be and what the general minimum would be. So we're going to be like negotiating within that space. And this is the art director's response, a hypothetical art director's response. Hi, Molly. We need exclusive rights in perpetuity and unlimited usage. We're thinking 1,200 total. Best art director. And this is me. Hi, art director. Gotcha. Okay, I won't be able to meet you at the 1,200, but let me know if you can swing 2,000. That includes the full buyout. And I kind of just like added this in as a little note. 3 concepts, 2 revisions, 1 final. Again, very, very common. Thanks, Molly. All right, so when I ask this, I already know that 2,000 is totally a reasonable price to ask for cover art for a larger publisher. And just like a general number to work within for cover art for larger publisher would be between like $950 and $3,500, depending on your expertise and the complexity of the piece. And again, this is just for title art. And this would be the art director's hypothetical response. Hey, Molly. Okay. Do you think we could do 1,000? Oops. Molly, do you think we could do 1,000 for sketches and then 1,000 if we decide to go to final? Best art director. So this is a really common practice to do sketches for an agreed upon price, have them see if it's within line of what they want, and then pay an additional fee for going to final. I usually only agree to something like this if it's a job that pays like over $1,000, especially since I'm working for an art rep with an art rep and she takes a cut of it. Or if it's just a company that I really like to work with, or I've worked with a lot or something like that. So this would be my response. Hi, art director. Yes, perfect. That would you please send along the contract, and then we'll get this on the books. Excited to work on this. Best, Molly. Okay, so if you're working with someone who's self-publishing, you can always write up your own contract and have them sign it. The pricing and ethical guidelines handbook. That is a tongue twister. It actually has a bunch of contracts in it that you can use as templates, which are awesome. But big name publishers are always going to have like a ton of paperwork for you to fill out before each job, which includes like an NDA and a contract for the job, etc., all that stuff. Okay, so let's just do a quick overview of that negotiation and kind of like the takeaway points. So standard book title art pricing is going to be between $950 and $3,500. This is a big name publisher, so I already know that I should be charging on the higher end of the spectrum. I personally am an expert in my field, so I can charge at the higher end of the spectrum. I already know that I won't go below 1,000 for this particular project. So if they can't swing above that, I'll turn it down for ethical reasons, unless it's something that merits me taking it on. That could be like, you know, personal reasons, like this was a dream job or a company that I really, you know, wanted to work with. And I know that the complexity of this particular project is pretty low. For me, at least. It's the brushed script lettering, which is not that difficult for me. So I'm not going to be charging the max within that pricing bracket. And my ideal price would be 2,000 or something like this. And just a little note on that. I don't always charge less just because of the complexity. Again, it's kind of in line with those hourly rates that I was talking about. Since I don't charge hourly, I don't always necessarily think to myself, okay, just because this isn't going to take me a long time doesn't mean it's worth something. It all just like depends on the job, and I'm pretty flexible. All right, so the very last point of this is that I negotiated between 1,000 and 2,000. So we did the two different, like doing the sketches and then going to final, which again is very common. Like you run into that all the time. So it's good to know how to negotiate that process. All right, so on to the second hypothetical, client inquiry. So for this one, I am choosing to outline lettering artwork for an ad campaign because campaigns tend to be harder to navigate and negotiate on. Campaigns are what every letterer wants because they pay extremely well and they're really, really fun to work on, in my opinion. So let's just hop right into that negotiation. Okay, so this would be the hypothetical inquiry. Hi, Molly, how are you? We have a large scope project in the works and we are considering using lettering throughout. Curious what your availability is over the next month. Right now we're thinking 5 quotes on 5 different full pages. I'm attaching a creative brief to give you a feel for what we had in mind. We'll need exclusive rights for print only worldwide for 1 year. The client might want to use the art on the web, but I'll let you know later on down the road when we have a better idea. Do you think you could give us a ballpark? Warmly, an art buyer at a big name ad agency. Okay, so a note on this inquiry. Right off the bat, any inquiries coming from an ad agency suggest a higher budget. So ad agencies tend to work with large clients with big budgets, and they put so much work into these campaigns, and they're beautiful and they're intentional. And so that's why just everything costs more for this. Not even just the lettering, but any illustration involved, any photography involved, et cetera, et cetera. So this would be my response. Okay. Hello, art buyer. Thank you for thinking of me. I'd love to help. Sounds like you're still narrowing down a few details, but I'd like to get rolling with this. Curious if you can disclose who the client is. I'd like to charge $5,000 per full page quote, so $25,000 for the full series. That includes all the usage you need. Let me know how that number goes over with your team and client. Warmly, Molly. So a quick note on this, yes, $25,000 is a ton of money. So do I always charge that much? No. In this scenario, I don't know who the client is, so I'm starting high and I'm totally open to negotiation, especially if they are bidding with other artists on this project. So that being said, I literally I have literally done multiple jobs with these exact same specifications. So like making $25,000 for a series of like 5 illustrations. Okay, so this is their response. Hypothetical, of course. Hey Molly, we're fine with $5,000 per illustration, but the client wants you to do trial sketches first before awarding the job. Does that work for you? Sorry, we can't disclose any info until you have signed an NDA. Very common. Thanks, art buyer. Okay, so this is a common practice when the client is shopping around for other artists, which I kind of mentioned a second ago. They get a couple of artists to do trial runs, and then they award the job after they choose the artists who seem like the best fit based on like skills and pricing, like a good combination. So don't take it personally if you don't get chosen to go to a final after doing a trial run for like a campaign like this. It seriously happens to all of us. Good artists, bad artists, in the middle. all of us have been turned down because we got outbidded by somebody else. It's just how it works, and it really doesn't mean anything personal. So anyways, this is my response. Hello, art buyer. Yep, that's totally fine. I charge $500 for concepts if you end up going another route. I would waive the $500 if you end up awarding me the job. 2 concepts, no revisions. Warmly, Molly. And if you can charge for a trial run, you absolutely should, because your time has value to it. Okay, this is their response. Hi, Molly, perfect. I'm gonna go ahead and have you sign our NDA and contract, and then let's hop on the phone and I'll walk you through the project and who the client is. We are going to need sketches by end of week. Best, art buyer. Okay, let's do a quick overview of what we just learned from this negotiation. And I just want to note that often campaign negotiation just really changes and fluxes throughout the whole process. Often they will add on more to the project as you're working on it, or they will say, oh, actually, we don't need this last illustration. And you kind of just have to roll with the punches throughout it, but definitely charge if they are asking for more, whether it's sketches, whether it's just concepts. Like I said, your time has value. It's so important to charge for your work, and just really like stand your grounds for that, because they do have it in their budget and that's what they are expecting from you. So often when you say, oh, I'm not going to charge for this because you feel like you shouldn't, really they're already expecting you to ask for that money. So you absolutely should. Worst case scenario, they say no, no big deal. Okay, so let's do a quick overview. Number 1, standard pricing for a full page lettering illustration is going to be around $950 to $1,200. And that's for, like, say you're working in a magazine or something like that. But because this is a series for a campaign and it's for a high-end client, we bump the range up to $1,200 to about $5,000. So I'm an expert in my field, like I said, so I know when I'm negotiating with them, I can charge at the higher end of the spectrum. I already know that I won't go below $2,000 per piece for this particular project. So if they can't swing that point, I'll turn it down for ethical reasons, unless, again, it's something that like merits me taking on. Maybe it's like a dream job or just something that I'm very excited about. Also, maybe I might lower my price if they end up like asking for more illustrations. So like instead of 5 illustrations, they end up asking for 10. So then I say, okay, I'm gonna lower the price on that. Okay, so I'm not sure of the complexity of this particular project while we are talking, so I'm just gonna quote them at the higher end and negotiate from there if I need to. And so lastly, we agree upon $5,000. That's my highest price that I wanted, by the way, which is amazing, and that's why it's so good to just ask for what you want and then negotiate from there. And then we also decided that we're gonna do a trial run for the 500. And then if I'm awarded, then it is the 5,000 per illustration. Okay, part 3, conclusion. We are finally getting to the very end here, folks. Thanks for sticking in there. I think it's been a little bit more than 25 minutes. Okay, first of all, thank you so much for being a part of this mini workshop 25 live series. I'm beyond grateful to have such a loyal and eager following. So thank you so much for that. It's awesome that you care enough about your business, your freelance work, to just take a little bit of time and like learn from another artist. I don't claim to know everything or that I'm right about everything, but I do just have my perspective from what I have seen and what I have experienced over the years. Okay. All right, so in this 25 minutes, I have shared with you how to price your work, pricing ranges for a few different types of jobs that we as lettering artists often take on, and I've shared a glimpse into how I negotiate with clients. So what can you take away from this? Well, first, hopefully you can quote your work with more confidence and charge what you are actually worth. Second, I hope that by sharing this information, I can encourage commercial letterers to get on the same page when it comes to pricing. So just a reminder, after this class has been completely recorded and uploaded to my site, I'm going to notify each of you so you can rewatch this, whatever you like, if you need to go back and reference something while you're negotiating with a client. And you can also snag my pricing cheat sheet that I'm gonna upload in there. It's not gonna be available right now, But again, once everything has been uploaded, it will be available. Here we go. I'm gonna go ahead and stop share. Here I am. So I really hope that you enjoyed this. I know I did. I know that there's a couple like little technological hiccups here and there, but thanks for sticking with me. This is pretty casual. And so that for this portion, and hello to all the new people who joined, working smoothly. Okay, cool. So for this last little bit, I just want to open it up to any questions that you might have. So if you want to go ahead, just ask any questions in the comment section. Okay, so Ilana kept raising her hand. I didn't know what that even meant. That was some sort of notification. So if you want to like let me know what that was, I'm sorry. I'm not totally certain what raising your hand means. I didn't know. Oh, you didn't mean to. Okay. I kept seeing you raising your hand like a notification, and that's what actually threw me off. And I'm like, is someone not able to see what or hear me or something? So cool. How do you go about finding an art rep? Holly, that I'm gonna do a whole thing on that one, because I get that's another question that I get all the time in addition to like pricing. But to give you like a short answer, I personally didn't find an art rep. My art rep found me, right place, right time. But I do think that finding an art rep, again, this is like a little short answer, is first of all, you need to make sure that you have a cohesive portfolio, that you are super comfortable in your craft, that you are comfortable with your creative voice, whatever that may be. You have a solid portfolio, and you have a few good freelance jobs under your belt, so you know how to conduct yourself well. And then if you have all those things, I would say do some research, just Google, different art reps, stuff like that. Send out an inquiry to different companies that you feel like your work aligns with. Make sure that you check that there's not another artist on their roster that like maybe looks very, very similar to yours, because an art rep most likely won't take you on if you are too similar to another artist that they already have on board. Oh, cool, you're on your phone. So Holly, does that answer your question a little bit? A little bit of a short answer to that? Cool. All right. Yeah. And I'm happy to answer any questions, later on down the road if you have any. But again, I think it would be cool to just do a little 25 live on that, and hopefully get more information in there in 25 minutes. So cool. Any more questions? We ended up only getting 12 participants in here. So how would you letter without a rep get work in front of ad agencies and publishers? Pretty much the same. I would say the same thing that I just said, is that having a cohesive portfolio, knowing what you're doing, having a creative voice, being able to conduct yourself professionally, and then promoting the heck out of your work, whether that is on Instagram, on the internet, on Twitter, connecting with other artists and collaborating. That is the best way to just get your name out there, especially if you don't have the resources to like track down different contacts at agencies and like send out promos. But again, I'll try to do another little series on that, because I get a lot of questions about promotion and getting your work in front of agencies and things like that. Because working for yourself is actually pretty cool. Everybody's always like, how do you get an art rep? Or how do you get an art rep? And I love working for my rep, but working for yourself is cool, and it's totally doable. I think that people just have this glamorous idea of like what working with a rep is like. And I think, wait, hold on. Sorry, I'm just looking at some of these. Usage rights. I don't have enough time to unpack all of the usage rights because of how complex they really are. But yes, they are totally unpacked in that pricing and guidelines handbook. So that's why I always just have it by my side. And it's something that, and this is why I think a lot of people get confused or overwhelmed. It's something that is kind of hard to explain in like a short, compact setting like this. Or even if I had a full class, it's kind of hard to explain it. It's more so like something that works best when it's in a handbook where you can just go reference it. If someone sends you an email and they say, oh, we want to be able to use this just on the web for a year. And you can say, okay, I'm going to go to this graph. And it's like usually just in a table. And you can say, okay, what does that look like? Having a rep. 25 live on having a rep. Yeah, I definitely need to do that. And I go back and forth all the time on whether I want one. Yeah, so having an art rep, like I said, is always, it's like, it's great because I love working with my rep, but honestly, like I know some artists who work with a rep and they don't get work, or they get work and they have a terrible relationship with the rep because maybe there are too many other artists on the roster, and so they don't ever get to like actually connect with their reps. Or something that I remember one of my friends told me, she worked with like a really large agency, and she told me that she actually never got to communicate with the client, that her rep would always be the liaison between herself and the client, which sounds horrible to me because I love working with clients and I love being on creative calls and I love like having, you know, my hands in the whole process. That's something I personally love. But a lot of times I get these questions and there's not really a right answer. It's kind of like my whole career, I've just been moving through this career and like feeling out what works for me, what doesn't. So something that I really enjoy might not be something that's joyful to someone else. So, okay, starting out, how did you handle pricing, objections, negotiations, to not set yourself short and be able to build your portfolio? Okay, so thanks for that question. I actually feel like that's a really good question. So I think that I want to like roll it back a little bit to when I started, because it was in like 2010, like I said, and the industry was just different back then. There really weren't a lot of people I was doing mostly like modern calligraphy when I first started, not too much lettering, but we're gonna loop it into the same thing because it really is very similar. But I could charge a lot for what I was doing and not get a lot of pushback because there was not a lot of people out there who were doing what I was doing at the same caliber. So I know that like Dana Tanamachi was doing it, and of course Jessica Hische, and they were just like totally killing it as I was moving my way into the scene. But ultimately, like I always would like compare myself to them, and they were just so amazing, which I'm sure a lot of you probably feel similarly to other artists where you say, oh my gosh, they're just so good, I'm so far behind. But even though I felt that way, agencies and clients still looped me in with them. And so I would get on bidding job, like I would get, I would be able to bid on a job with like Dana Tanamachi. Like her work is amazing, and I always felt like it wasn't even near as good as hers, but we would get in front of the same clients, which is absolutely amazing because of the context of when I started. So I didn't get a lot of pushback, but over the years, sometimes I do. And I think a lot of it is just being confident and then knowing if you want the job bad enough and why you're taking it. Like, are you lowering your prices because you're desperate, or are you lowering your prices because it's a good cause? Or are you lowering your prices because maybe it just genuinely isn't in their budget and it's like a dream job? And you just have to ask yourself all those questions. And I always just have a minimum, like I said, like a bracket that I work within. And I say, this is my minimum, this is my max, what I want to get. And if they go below my minimum, odds are I'm not going to take the job. And I'll just say nicely, and I'll just say, hey, that's not within my standard pricing, so I'm sorry, I'd love to like recommend another artist, or blah, 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 blah. So hopefully that answers your questions on that. Okay, do you have any advice for getting over those feelings of self-doubt in regards to pricing? I've been lettering for a few years, but charging those prices still seems scary. So I think that something to know, I can't see your full name, Kelly. I think something to know is to just know when you price those things that other people are pricing those things. And that's why having like a range, like a bracket. So say, like I was saying, I take into consideration, hey, I'm an expert, so I am going to be charging on the higher end of the bracket. If you say, hey, I've been lettering for a few years, I have some really good clients on my list, I can charge in that middle. And just, I guess the best advice I can give is to just know that you're not alone. People are charging that. And so if someone is trying to say, hey, that's not a fair price, they're just wrong. Like they're just saying that. And I guess just knowing that you're not alone. Kelsey. Okay, cool. Kelsey. Does that answer your question? Just like knowing that it's standard, that you're not asking for too much. Does that make sense? And yeah, it does seem scary when you're just starting off. I remember your Skillshare class. Awesome. Oh my gosh, that was so long ago. Yes, thank you. I know, and we all struggle with it. We really do, but I think it's crazy because the industry is like so much more saturated than it used to be, and so um, you'd think that I would still be nervous about charging the same things that I charge because it's like, oh, I'm not going to get the job, and sometimes I don't get the job. But I'm just, I've been doing it long enough that I know what a fair price to ask is, or at least a fair range. And that's where you can kind of be like, okay, I can move around. I don't have to like, feel like I'm stuck on this one price. But it is good to know what is like the bare minimum, because if someone is asking below that, they're like dragging the entire industry down in the standards. And so it's just, I keep stressing the idea that it's like, it's part of a whole. Like, it's not just you, Kelsey, who it needs to be able to make a living doing this. It's me. Like, it literally is related to what I can, if you were to charge, say, like, for like a book cover with a big publisher, if you were to charge like $250 for a title with a big publisher, that would make it so like I can't charge, $3,000 for that cover, when really you could probably be charging $1,200 for that cover. And so you see what I mean? Like, it's just kind of this like combination of everybody working together to set these standards so artists get paid well, and that their time is actually viewed as valuable, because so many people like to think, oh, you're an artist, that means that I don't have to pay you, or you're going to do it for free. And it seems so cliche to even say that, but it's silly to think that people even think that they don't have to pay us for stuff. Like, I get questions like that all the time. So hopefully that's helpful. All right, so we're going to be wrapping it up here. It ended up being like, oh my gosh, almost an hour. I wanted to keep it to 25 minutes. But do we have any more questions? I can answer one more question if someone wants to ask. And if not, then thanks. Thank you. Yeah, oh, no, okay. Yeah, we just had someone who just logged in. Totally fine. I recorded the whole thing. It's going to be uploaded so you can be able to watch it. Sorry you weren't able to like hang out for the Q&A session, but all of it is going to be, I know, like I totally like forget those types of things too. But yeah, it's all going to be up there. You can rewatch everything. I'm going to have a great little cheat sheet, which will be very helpful, in honor of Miss Jessica Hish, who did that for so many artists back on her blog back in 2011. Thank you. Thanks so much for everyone being here. I really appreciate it. It's like such an honor to be able to an honor and a privilege to be able to be here and like talk to people and say, oh, this is what I do, and that people want to know. Thanks. Cool. All right, well, I think that's it for now. Again, anyone who kind of like logged in at the end, you'll still be able to have access to this entire class. I'll make sure to send out a link to that once it's up and rolling, and it's totally free. And if any of you just like have dying questions that you didn't get to ask or they didn't get answered, maybe, I missed it, feel free to send me an email. And if I don't answer right away, just nudge me because, we're all in this together. And like I said, it's like we really should be thinking of this as like we're all one big team, instead of the fact that like we're constantly competing with each other. I think it's important to like reframe the way we look at it, and encourage each other to set standard pricing and continue to find our creative voices and really like lean into what makes us unique and what makes our work special. I think that is like a good thing for everybody. So yeah, thanks so much everybody for your time. I appreciate it, and have a good rest of the day and good holidays for whatever you may celebrate. All right. See you, everybody.